my loves. Class is officially in session. Welcome back to another episode of Relationship Boss Academy. I hope you are having an amazing day and feeling amazing. I personally, how am I feeling? I woke up feeling a little under the weather. My throat was a little scratchy. I wanted to just kind of go to the gym though and walk. So I listened to my body and just walked. We didn't do anything crazy or anything along those lines. I was listening to myself, which felt really, really good. I posted to my Instagram yesterday. Diddy got arrested. How do we feel about all of that? I personally am so happy to see it. Karma is 100% karma-ing. It was about damn time this happened. I have been seeing videos and reading things about everything that he has done to women, to men, to so many different people. And I know that this is the era of celebrities, all of the truth coming out. But that's because the year of Aquarius is really doing its thing. I knew that when this year started, that karma was going to happen to the people who deserved it most. And so I personally love to see it. I love to see it. So funny though, because if you know that I'm a huge SVU fan. I watch a lot of true crime, okay? I watch a lot of true crime. And when he got arrested, I literally turned to my husband and I said, they're going to hold him without bail because he is a flight risk. And I said it exactly like that. And I felt so assured of myself. And guess what? A couple of hours later, the articles start coming out that they are holding him without bail because he is a flight risk. I was like, see, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. All of the years of SVU, that information stays in my head. It really does. New season starts in October, season 26. I can't even believe it. Mariska is still doing her thing. Today, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, this is going to be a completely 180 from the intro that I talked about Diddy, but whatever. Self-sabotage. Because I am quite familiar with self-sabotaging, whether it is my relationships, whether it is my career, and it kind of sucks to have that realization that you are self-sabotaging. When I first got into a relationship with my husband, Anthony, every time that we would get into a really uncomfortable argument, or every time we would get into a fight, I would go into immediate fight or flight mode. And I blame this. Yes, I do. I blame this on my past relationship. I really blame it on that because that relationship traumatized me deeply to my core in so many different ways. And I've told my story about that relationship on this podcast before, but I've never gone into the nitty-gritty details of it. So if you're subscribed to the Patreon, I am going to go into nitty-gritty details of that entire story because there are things that I never have shared on this platform about that period of my life before. But when I started getting into a relationship with Anthony and things started getting serious, when we would get into a fight or when we would get into an argument, my first reaction is to be well, why don't we just break up? We should just end this relationship. We should just break up. And I just wanted to be the one to hurt him, I think, before he had the opportunity to hurt me because I loved him. I really genuinely loved him. And I was just operating from a place of utter fear. I was so afraid of getting my heart broken and my heart hurt again that I had no idea that I was actually the one who was hurting my heart and breaking my own heart by saying these things to somebody that I loved. Because do you think that that feels good for him to hear me say that? I know deep down in my soul and in my gut that I don't mean those things. I know that I don't want to break up. I know that. But my partner doesn't know that. So every time I would say that to him, it was just gut-wrenching, I'm sure. And he would tell me that that hurt him all of the time. And when I would hurt him, it would make him even more upset. And then our fights would just get to these places that seemed so impossible sometimes to come down from. So as I kept doing this, I knew something had to change. Like, Anthony set a very strict boundary in our relationship, and I agreed to this boundary because he was absolutely right that unless I really meant breaking up, unless he really meant breaking up or ending our relationship, getting divorced, whatever that looked like, that we would not throw those words out there unless we actually meant it, because it is so damaging to us individually and us together as a couple. And so if you feel like you are self-sabotaging, it's going to show up in a few different ways in your relationship. And I wish I had the magic. This is exactly why you were self-sabotaging in your relationships. But I really do think that, like, as a whole, you can probably fall into one of the categories of you're doing it because you don't believe that you deserve to have a beautiful, amazing, healthy love. And that's some like self-worth, self-love stuff you've got to figure out from within. It could stem from stuff in your childhood that has gone unhealed, unlooked at, just completely unresolved because maybe you haven't had the opportunity yet, or you haven't had the self-awareness to be like, oh my gosh, I'm self-sabotaging. I need to do some inner work on myself. We could also self-sabotage because we've had our heart broken before. And we want to be the ones to potentially protect our own heart instead of allowing someone to hurt our heart. So we try to beat the other person to the punch, let's say, when we feel like things are getting really, really, really hard. And we're so afraid that, like, they're going to be the ones to break up with us. So we want to do it first. And there could be a numerous amount of other reasons why we self-sabotage, but I think that it mostly does stem from fear. It stems from fear, like most things do in our lives. But that's for you to take the time to do the inner work on yourself and work with like a professional therapist or someone like me to really help you get down to the root of why you are self-sabotaging, because you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be in a relationship. You deserve to feel love and receive love and have all of those beautiful, wonderful things that I know you probably want deep down inside. So stop ruining it, okay? Let's just talk a little bit about what self-sabotage could even look like for you. I have a list here. Just bear with me, okay? So 1, you're constantly doubting your partner's intentions. So anytime they even do something remotely nice for you, like buy you flowers, you're immediately like, well, what do you want in return? What do you want in return? Instead of just being like, wow, thank you so much. I appreciate this. I deserve these flowers. You think that there's like an immediate tit for tat thing going on. That's going to be a whole nother episode. The whole tit for tat, this is not fair, this is not fair, but I'm talking strictly in self-sabotaging terms right now, okay? So you're constantly questioning your partner's intentions and making it known to them that you are questioning their intentions, all right? Maybe you also avoid very difficult conversations. I think naturally we all want to avoid the difficult conversations. Let's just be real. No one wants to have really hard convos. But I need everybody to understand that those hard conversations are so beyond necessary to help your relationship grow, to help you overcome any hurdle that you two are going through, so that it doesn't feel like a hard conversation anymore. Like, it only feels hard because maybe it's a little uncomfortable, or maybe it's a little unfamiliar, and maybe you're not used to talking about your feelings or your wants or your needs or what's working or what's not working. So it's just new, it's just fresh. And as you start to have these conversations within your relationship more frequently, they don't feel that hard anymore. And they don't feel that scary anymore. So stop sabotaging your relationship by just avoiding the hard stuff, because you're hurting your relationship when you have the opportunity to be helping it, and you're probably hurting yourself as well because you're not talking about the things that you know need to be talked about. So that builds up resentment, and that builds up the hurt, and that builds up the anger. And none of that is going to help you. It's going to hurt you, which is why it's called self-sabotaging, right? Maybe you push your partner away, just like the example I gave at the beginning of this episode, where you are constantly feeling the need to do everything yourself. You're maybe even hyper independent because you had to learn how to be hyper independent for a long time. And anytime you're offered help by your partner, you're like, I got it. I got it. Right? Or anytime there's an argument or something going on, you push them away because you just don't want to deal with the feelings. You don't want to deal with the hard emotions. And most of us are scared of the hard feelings. Most of us are scared of the sadder emotions or the negative. I'm putting this in quotes if you're not watching, the negative emotions. Don't be scared of those. So don't push people away for an effort to not feel those things. Okay? Overanalyzing everything. There is sometimes not an underlying reason for the way things are or for why people do things in our lives or the way things happen. Like sometimes we make it so much harder on ourselves and it really has to be. It doesn't have to be that hard. We don't have to overanalyze everything. That is something where you need to work on your mindset, where you need to work on shifting your mindset and not overthinking, not overanalyzing, okay? Because if you're going to end up driving yourself crazy by overanalyzing every interaction that you have with your partner, whether it's positive or negative. And that in itself is sabotaging what you've got going on in your partnership and even with a relationship that you have with yourself. Just learn to be present. And it's so much easier said than done. I fully am aware of that. I fully am aware of that. But you guys know that I got you. And if you ever want to apply to work with me or book a session, I will help you get the tools that you need to stop overanalyzing and get to a place where we can kind of manage our mindset a little bit here and start to trust yourself, start to trust your partner. Testing their loyalty. I hate it when we are testing our partners in relationships. Okay, some of the things that I even see like on online on TikTok of people like having someone reach out to their partner and test them to test their loyalty and catch them in a lie or catch them cheating. Like, come on. Come on. We got to be a little bit more grown up than that and a little bit more mature than that. If your partner is going to cheat on you and if your partner is going to not be loyal to you, you will find out, but we should not be testing them. That is just a little bit immature, if you ask me, okay? Everybody's true colors will come out. Everybody's true colors will show. And if you're a woman, you can agree with me that we will always find out. Listen, we will always find out. We do not need to be testing our partner's loyalty. Okay? Okay. Not setting or respecting boundaries. That is straightforward. Why aren't you setting boundaries? If you know something makes you uncomfortable, that's when we need to set a boundary. If you know something makes you feel unsafe emotionally or physically, that's when we need to set a boundary. All right? If someone sets a boundary with you, respect their boundary. Like it's that's all that there is to it. You have to learn how to respect other people's boundaries and set and respect your own boundaries. And we can talk about boundaries in a whole like 30-minute episode because there is so much that goes into it. But from this little bit here, if someone is setting a boundary with you, it doesn't mean that they hate you. It doesn't mean they don't like you. It doesn't mean that they don't respect you. It means that they just want the best for your relationship and they want your relationship to thrive and they want your relationship to be healthy, which is why we also need to set our own boundaries in relationships as well. Okay? Every time you compare your relationship to another person's relationship, I do see that as a form of sabotaging. Because everybody's relationships are so different. What works for them may not work for you. What works for me may not also work for you. Also, everybody is on their own timeline. Stop comparing your relationship and your timeline to what everybody else is doing. It's going to cause so many more problems in your relationship than you know. If you have an issue or if you see what is going on in someone else's relationship and you like what you see that My husband, he does bring me flowers all of the time, and I do post about that. If you see that and it makes you jealous and you start comparing and you're like, well, my partner doesn't bring me flowers like that. Okay. Instead of going to your partner and being like, so-and-so's partner brings them flowers all of the time. Why don't you do that for me? I want you to not operate from that place of comparison. And instead, if you feel a certain type of way when you see someone receiving something in their relationship, ask yourself, why am I feeling this type of a way? If I'm jealous, that's just a sign that that's something that I want in my relationship. And maybe I want that in my relationship because it makes me feel loved, it makes me feel fulfilled, it makes me feel happy, it makes me feel special. So then you go to your partner and you communicate in a healthy way. I would love it if I could get flowers just because sometimes, because that's what makes me feel loved and that's what makes me feel fulfilled. So, such a two different approaches, and you are going to get such different results. So, if you're constantly looking outside around you and you get certain types of feelings about those things, analyze those feelings before you go to your partner and start like comparing and putting it in their face and saying things that are hurtful to somebody else. Okay. And always remember that, especially what people tell us and what we see online, is most of the time a highlight reel. Most of the time, your best friend is not going to tell you, I got in a huge fight with my partner last night. They're not going to tell you that because sometimes people want to perceive their relationships as being perfect and that nothing is wrong with them. And that's their prerogative. I'm never going to do that. I'm always going to be here to air my dirty laundry. If you are subscribed to the Patreon, you know that me and my husband had a heated conversation about communicating and wants and needs on Wednesday's episode. So if you know, you know. Okay. Holding on to past hurts. Stop holding on to the past. The past is never going to change. The only thing you can change is the present, and we cannot control the future. So stop holding on to past hurts and using them as ammunition against your partner in every fight and every argument. You're just hurting yourself. You are sabotaging the growth of your relationship. Okay? Okay. Refusing to apologize and take responsibility. It's just being an adult. Just be mature. If you did something wrong to hurt somebody else, stop refusing to apologize and grow up and take responsibility for your part in how we got to where we got to. Because if you don't do that, you're hurting the other person. You're hurting your partner by not doing that. And you're also hurting yourself because you're not using what happened as a learning opportunity for you to grow from it and for you to potentially not do it again moving forward. Okay? Ba 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 ba. Oh, everybody's favorite. Self-sabotaging with negative self-talk. You guys do realize that our minds create our reality. If you are constantly telling yourself this relationship's not going to work, this relationship is doomed. My partner is never going to propose to me. My partner's never going to be with me. Guess what's going to happen? That's going to come to fruition. That's what's going to be your reality. That's what's going to be your truth. Watch the way you talk to yourself, especially about your relationship, especially the negative stuff. You have to talk about things like, listen, I'm going through a rough patch in my relationship right now. Does that mean that we're doomed? No. What proof do I have that we're going to break up just because we're having a rough moment? None. What can I do? I can only control myself. So I can either communicate with my partner how I'm feeling and what I need, or I can work on myself and grow in the areas that I know that we need to be growing in our relationship. Change the way you're thinking. Change that negative self-talk, because the way you talk to yourself is absolutely going to sabotage what you have right in front of you. All right? This one doesn't need a lot of explanation, keeping score. If you are going to keep score in your relationship and consistently decide what's fair and what's not fair and be like, well, I did this, so you have to do that, you're going to get nowhere. That tactic is not going to work whatsoever. Cut the shit right now. I can't tell you how many times in the beginning of my relationship I had to be like, Anthony, stop with the tit for tat stuff. Stop with the this is not fair stuff. It's not going to work. Okay. Being overly critical. We are all human. Please stop picking apart your partner. We all have our own flaws. We are never going to be perfect. And if you are getting the ick at every tiny little thing that your partner does, you are just making your own life harder. You're hurting your partner in the process of that, because you wouldn't want someone to be hyper and overly critical of you, would you? No. Seeking validation outside the relationship. This one is for the people who, if you resonate with that one and you're constantly seeking validation from like other men or other women, and what you feel like you have in front of you in your relationship is not enough, that is 100% self-sabotaging, because you have a relationship with self problem that you really need to work on. You seeking other people's validation from all of the outside stuff, that just means that any validation you're getting from your partner, it feels like it's not enough, and you're not giving it to yourself, which really feels like it's not enough. And so when you go to outside people, it's never going to feel enough. That is a relationship with self issue that you have to start kind of working on and exploring and figuring out why you need all of this outside validation. And when you do that, you're hurting the person you love. You're also probably hurting yourself, because you know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. Okay? And lastly, making everything about you. I hate to be the one to say it, but it's not always about you. If your partner has a bad day and they're in a bad mood, it's not always going to be about you. If you have a bad day or if you're in a bad mood, fix it, right? Work through it. Learn how to self-soothe yourself and to not let it out onto your partner. But when you try to make every little thing about you, when you try to manage your partner's emotions, when they have an off day and you make it about you, it's just because you're uncomfortable. And so if you pick a fight about it, or if you get in your partner's face about it, or I watched this scene on 90 Day Fiancé, and one of the girls, she was having a horrible anxiety and she just wanted to be left alone. But her partner couldn't stop making it about her. She was making it all about her, and she was like getting in her partner's face who's having this anxiety attack, and that in itself was just sabotaging the whole thing. I was watching this and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just trust me, it's not always about you, okay? It's not always going to be about you. Now, if any of these things you resonate with, does it mean you're self-sabotaging 100%? No, we could just be having some of these unhealthy behaviors or habits that we need to kind of like shine a light on and change and grow from. But if you resonated with a lot of them, then it could be a form of self-sabotage 100%. You don't deserve that. Your partner doesn't deserve that, okay? So if you feel like maybe you want some support in this area, reach out to me, book a session, apply to work with me long term. Just do something different than what you've been doing if you're realizing something needs to change because what you've been doing hasn't been working. You can't expect different results by doing the same thing. Something has to change in order to change your results, all right? So if you realize you're consistently fighting with your partner over and over and over again about the same stuff, if you realize that you can't keep any long-term relationships and you're just going through partners one after one after one after another, all right? Or you keep attracting the same type of partner, which is unhealthy. These are just a few kind of like, okay, I might be self-sabotaging here. It's time to do something a little different. All right, my loves. Make sure you subscribe to the Patreon to get the unfiltered bonus episodes. Wednesday's episode on Patreon is me and my husband. He is such a gem to have on because he's real AF. And we always get into some shit when we are talking. And just know I love you so much, and I'm always here if you have questions, you want to follow, you want to work with me. You know, if you're listening to this in the morning, afternoon, or night, my loves, I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, or night.